Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be reviewing our unit on the Arabian Peninsula, Rise of Islam, Islam chapter. You know what I'm talking about. Let's get into it. So right here you are looking at a satellite image of the Arabian Peninsula. You can see on the corner where it is on the globe, it's right there at the edge of the Mediterranean Sea next to Africa. So please familiarize yourself with this geography. Before Islam, that's what we're talking about right now, people called Bedouins lived in the Arabian Peninsula. They were nomads. They traveled around. The geography and climate here are not that forgiving, so it's difficult to, have cities throughout the whole place because a lot of it is a desert. So they would live in these oasis towns if they were sedentary Arabs. But if they were Bedouins, they would travel from an oasis to the next one with flocks of sheep and goats and camels. And they would travel around because their animals needed land to graze on. So if you weren't a nomad, you were a sedentary Arab and you lived in an oasis town, which means there's water. And the area in which people would live in these oasis towns was called the Hijaz region. And let me highlight that on the screen for you all. So that is going to be right in here. I know that's a beautiful drawing. And that is going to be along some mountains, which we know affects climate. So it's not as harsh of climate as the rest of the peninsula. So because people are coming to these oasis towns, we're going to have trade, which brings money and more people. And so we're going to have some cities that develop, and one of which is called Mecca. And Mecca is going to be the birthplace of this guy named Muhammad. And he starts off and he lives a lot of his life as just a normal person. But, halfway through his life, he's going to found a religion that is the second most popular religion in the entire world today. So like many civilizations prior to there being a federal or national level government, it's going to be very local, just like we have in Europe, just like we've had with our Mongols. They're going to be based on tribes and families. So who they are related to is who is going to be like their allies. There's not going to be a national government. Religion is going to be based on Arabian mythology, so similar to what our Greeks and our Romans had. Oftentimes, before you have the introduction of a monotheistic religion like Judaism or Islam or Christianity, you will have a polytheistic religion in which a lot of the religion is based on natural events. They can't explain why there was an earthquake, so they'll attribute it to a god. They had demons, demigods, and genies, so you've seen these in movies. A lot of that comes from Arabian mythology. In the Arabian Peninsula, there were Jews and Christians, as we'll see, more so in northern Arabian Peninsula, closer to the Mediterranean, basically around the Holy Land. So the guy Muhammad that I was talking about earlier, he is going to start to preach that there is only one God and that God has sent this message to him. And he's going to start gaining followers. So he lived most of his life as a normal person, and then just randomly in his life, he's going to start receiving these visions from someone who says that they are the one God, and that God is going to be called Allah, and he's going to start preaching about the visions that he hears, and that's going to start Islam. Obviously, there are going to be a lot more details to it that we'll get into, but that's the basic summary of how it begins. So Muhammad is going to use this religion to unify the people. So as I said before, the Arabian Peninsula was very tribal. But with this introduction of Islam, there's a unifying factor. So Muhammad is going to become a religious and political authority, which they will call a caliph. That is the name of the ruler. So under Islam, he's going to start consolidating power, uniting the Arabian Peninsula. And even after he died, it's going to continue to expand. And these Islamic empires that we'll get into in a little bit are going to rapidly expand into a lot of territory that the Roman Empire used to have. So if you look at the screen, the dark orange is the Islamic world under Muhammad. So in 10 years, he spread his empire from just Medina to that whole area. And then the first 4 caliphs is the lighter orange, and you can see that incorporates a lot of Persia, Egypt, and then the Umayyad dynasty is going to conquer the Iberian Peninsula, which, if you remember, we just talked about Spain and the Reconquista, in which they kicked out the Moors. Well, those Moors are the Umayyad dynasty. So it's not until the Reconquista that the Islamic empires leave Spain. So this is a very fast expansion. It starts in 622, and by 750 they have all of the territory you see on the screen that is not in yellow. So very fast expansion when you look at it through a historical lens. Y'all might be thinking, well, Ms. Crawford, why did they expand so quickly? Well, there's several reasons, one of which is going to be the fact that they are willing to fight to spread their religion. And a word for holy war is a jihad. So you can see that on the screen. Some other reasons for their expansion is they were kind of in the right place at the right time. So our Byzantine Empire and our Persian Empire had been fighting each other. So they're very weak. When the Islamic empires reach them, they're not at their strongest point, so they're able to expand into their territory. Also, when the Muslims would conquer a territory, they didn't force Jews and Christians to convert. It was highly suggested, and their life was made very difficult if they did not convert. But just like with the Mongols, if you do not force a conversion, a lot of times people are more willing to accept your reign. So they're not going to rebel as much if you're not changing the everyday features of their life. They're like, okay, well, I mean, they're not changing my religion, so I guess we'll just have them, govern us. Also, a lot of people in the Arabian Peninsula were very accepting of Islam. So not only were they, accepting of the government, but they believed the religion. So if people are excited about the religion, it's going to expand quickly. Okay, this gets a little bit confusing here. So after Muhammad's death, there are 4 people that are the first 4 caliphs, which is the ruler of Islam, basically a religious and political ruler. And these first 4 people were some of Muhammad's closest followers during his life. They're going to spread Islam throughout Syria, Egypt, Persia, and North Africa. But because of what happens with these first 4 caliphs, it's going to lead to the major divisions in Islam today. So that's going to lead to the difference between the Sunni and the Shia that exists in Islam today, which I will explain in the next slide. Okay, so here we are looking at the difference between Sunni and Shia. There's a video that I will link for you all to watch about this. It goes a lot more in detail than I will here. But the Sunnis believe that the first 4 caliphs were the rightly guided caliphs. They were in the correct order. They also think that they should follow the Sunnah, which is a different text than the Quran, which is their main book. And the Sunnah is basically how Muhammad lived his life and examples and stories. And they hold that in really high regard. And that's not something that the Shia do. And they also think there are some different interpretations of text in the Quran. And this is not unique. In many religions, there are debates on interpretations of the religious text. And that's something that's present in Islam as well. So the Sunni and the Shia have different interpretations of text. So looking at the Shia, they believe that this guy named Ali should have been the first caliph. He is Muhammad's son-in-law. He was one of the first 4 caliphs, but they think he was skipped over and that he should have been caliph all along from Muhammad's death until Ali himself passed away. they think that if you are going to be a caliph, you must be related to Muhammad, not just a close, ally. You need to have been blood related to him. And they also do not to this day hold the Sunnah in as high of regard. So that book that tells stories about Muhammad's life, they don't listen to that as much as the other group does. And they also believe that their interpretation of the Quran is right and that the Sunni are wrong, just like the Sunni think that the Shia are wrong. If you look down at that graph, the Shia make up 16% and the Sunni make up around 83%. But what's interesting is in Iran, which is, ancient Persia, it's basically most Shias live in Persia, Iran, okay? That's where they're very prominent. And most of the rest of the world, people are Sunni Muslims. So Shia is very popular in Iran and not so much throughout the rest of the world.